We're going to hear now from Burns and David Hagan, who are long-term travellers from Liverpool, who've just come back to start life again in their native city, which is where we are. And I just love this. It says, "Oh, what are you doing?"
This is a stage invasion.
Yeah, I'm speaking. Did you notice?
Apologies.
No, this is David and Catherine. Come in. I want to tell you this. I just wanted to read you this. I thought it was great. It said, over 5.5 years, they explored the extremes of nature and culture, living in the Borneo jungle with orang-utans, and nearly killing a Burmese MP in the world's hottest chili competition. And then it said, they also spent Christmas with a tribe of opium-smoking, headhunting Robbie Williams fans. And I thought, why did you have to leave Liverpool to do that? The city's full of them. David and Catherine, thank you. Welcome.
Thank you very much.
Good afternoon, TEDxers. As you've heard, I'm Catherine Burns.
And I'm David Hagan.
We're here to speak to you today about our 5.5+ year travel trip and the learning we discovered during that time. And before we start, we'd just like to say we're delighted to be here on the stage today. During the time we travelled, we've spoke on many stages, but nothing can equal being here on the stage at the Everyman in our home city. And I was going to thank Herb and his team for inviting us to be part of this day, but I'm not going to now because when I thought about it, he's given us a really tough challenge, which is to condense 5.5 years worth of travel into a 16-minute speech. So that means I've got to speak at a rate of 4 months per minute. So there'll be no time for thank yous, we'll just crack on with it. We left Liverpool in 2008, which was the week Liverpool One opened.
That was a coincidence, by the way. It wasn't like a protest against Liverpool One or anything like that.
And we left in a conventional way. We got the train down to Heathrow and then flew to Bangkok. Coming back, slightly less conventional. We hitchhiked from Iraq to Liverpool. And during the 2,500 miles we covered, we relied exclusively on the generosity of strangers who transported us, housed us, fed us, and led us from another world back to the final leg of our journey, which was the ferry across the Mersey. And so I guess in our speech today, the key message is that you know, despite the barrage of negative press out there about this scary place, the world is full of amazing people who will open their homes, their hearts, and the cars to strangers. And if you travel with the right spirit, take the right chances, and go to the right places, then you'll find a living culture of hospitality, a life-affirming generosity, awaits you every step of the way.
Yeah, but what do people back home always say to us when we tell them about these adventures we've had in this hospitality?
Well, that's lovely, but it would never happen here.
So before we go on to talk about that a little bit more, I just want to tell you about how we discovered this world of hospitality out there. As Catherine said, our travels started conventionally enough, going to beaches in Thailand, going to Bali. But then we started to go off the beaten track a bit. We went to work for the Orang-Utan Foundation in Indonesia and Borneo. And it was whilst we were living in the jungle, looking after these incredible apes. And incidentally, they taught us our manners, as you noticed, with walking on behind Sir Ken while he was introducing us. While we were there in the jungle, we fell in with some of the local people. And they invited us back to their village, which no Westerners had ever visited before. And they took us in as their own. We ended up staying there for 2-3 months deep in the Borneo jungle, high up the rivers. And we actually ended up teaching English to the people of the village, which was quite an interesting experience. And I think in the future, it'll be interesting to see when some future anthropologist heads up the same river, deep into Borneo jungle, looking for these undiscovered tribes. And we'll find this tribe all speaking Scouse. They'll be thinking there's some really interesting kind of cultural mix going on here, though we're not so sure about. Anyway, the experiences in the jungle gave us a kind of passion to try and find those places where native culture still existed, but perhaps was under threat, where traditional culture and traditional hospitality, indeed, still existed. And that's what led us to Papua New Guinea. And Papua New Guinea is an absolutely incredible country. And once again, we found ourselves there in a village that no Westerner had ever visited before, and the whole village came out to greet us. They were going to put us up in they call him the big man, it means the chief. They were going to put us up in his hut. They all came out to greet us, and they said, "Where are you from?" So we said, "Liverpool." Now, as an Evertonian, it pains me to say this, but generally people do recognise Liverpool all around the world, unfortunately, on account of Liverpool Football Club. I've spent most of the last 5.5 years telling people, actually, there are 2 teams from Liverpool. To looks of bemusement and sometimes just laughing at me. Anyway, so I said to them, "We're from Liverpool," and the whole village went into a huddle, and eventually one of them came out and said, "We do not know it." I said, oh, it's in England. So again, a huddle was formed, and again, they came out and said, "We do not know it." So I said, I was getting a bit desperate, so I said, "David Beckham's from there." And they a huddle once more, and "We do not know him." So I thought, okay. So it transpired that the only place outside of Papua New Guinea they'd ever heard of was Australia. And the only celebrity they'd ever heard of who we knew in common was an Australian rugby player called Darren Lockyer. I discovered even that there was a lady next to me, she had a child. She introduced him as Elvis. And I said, like the king. And she said, "Which king is that?" We had and I should have guessed really, because the guy who was hosting us at that time, he had a son by the name of Adolf. So I probably should have guessed that they weren't so familiar with famous people from the outside world. Anyway, as the first Westerners to visit this country, we returned, this village I should say, we returned to the nearest town, and we met the only other tourist that we met in our whole time in Papua New Guinea, a man by the name of Graham Hughes. I believe you've already heard from him today. And Graham's an adventurous type, as you probably gathered. And we sent him to the village that we just stayed in. So you can imagine, these people have never had any contact with the Western world in all their history. And then within 1 week, 3 Scousers turned up. And Graham, and then so I thought to myself, I wonder what their image of the world outside is now at this moment. They probably imagine there's a big country called Papua New Guinea. Next to it, there's a very small country called Australia, where Darren Lockyer lives. And then the whole rest of the world is this gigantic country called Liverpool, populated by these strange red and blonde and grey-haired people, who've come to visit them. And anyway, during our time in Papua New Guinea and the neighbouring Solomon Islands, we really encountered incredible hospitality. We never, on any occasion, had to pay for any accommodation because people always would take us in and put us up in their homes, which was just absolutely remarkable. And as we opened up more to this culture of hospitality, we discovered it exists in so many other places too. Take India, for example. During our time there, we were put up on more than 50 occasions by people actually welcoming us into their homes. And they always use this phrase when they talk to you. They say, "The guest is God." And in their culture, they really sort of exemplify that. And it made me feel quite emotional when I think about how people from other countries and cultures sometimes get treated in our own country. Perhaps not the same attitude extended.
Yeah, it's true. But with regard to this hospitality, there was one country we found to be the world centre for hospitality. So what is that country? Well, that country for us was Iraq. And just to qualify it, I'm talking about northern Iraq. I'm talking about Kurdish Iraq. I'm talking about the Iraq where the people were so glad to see the back of their oppressor Saddam that they're exempt of the problems they have in their southern counterpart, Arabic Iraq. And for the visitor, Iraq is a cashless society. As a tourist, you don't need any currency. So you go out for a tea and try paying for a tea. So on the first evening when we arrived in Dohuk, Dave and I were looking at a map trying to find a cheap hotel, and we were approached by a local. And he asked us what we were up to, and we told him, and he said, it would be my honour to pay for your stay while you're here in Dohuk. Well, very tempting, but we decided to refuse that offer, but we did go with him for a tea, which of course he paid for. And later that evening, we found a hotel, And we had a very pleasant few days in Dohuk. And we were checking out and approached the reception, and we were greeted by the hotelier, and we asked for the bill. And he told us, no, you're a guest in our country, there is no bill. So it was pretty good. But then...
It's a funny strategy for a hotelier, I think, to try and employ her to explain his business was not going to be too successful.
We did, however, run into some problems in Iraq. We ran into trouble one day when we were out hitchhiking, and when we got into the car, we realised that our driver was a Kurdish soldier who was armed with an AK-47, and he proceeded to kidnap us. Well, this was a kidnapping. The type of kidnapping it was, we'd experienced many times. We call this phenomenon the hospitality kidnapping, whereby these people are so desperate to help you that they take you back to the home, won't let you leave, keep you there for a week, and the mother feeds you to within an inch of your life. And our host on this occasion, Hassan, could speak no English, and he used Google Translate to converse with us. And most of the dialogue was very pleasant, apart from the fact that he seemed to be referring to us constantly as the infidel. So I guess the learning in that for us was that technology is not always a solution to communication issues. And from all the positive experience we had in Iraq, we decided to set ourselves a challenge and test generosity to the limits. And that challenge was to hitchhike from Iraq to Liverpool.
Yeah, so what was that experience like, hitchhiking from Iraq to Liverpool? Well, the first thing to say about the test is, obviously, it didn't go too badly. We made it, we're here. And what did we learn along the way? We discovered that hospitality gets less the further west you go. So when you're in Turkey, for example, the cars are queuing up to pick you up. They will take you for a meal en route. They will insist on paying. You're a guest in their country. If they can, they'll take you back to meet the family, and you're greeted like returning children. You travel into Eastern Europe, and you find that the lifts still come, but some of the extras have kind of died off a bit. People won't take you for a meal anymore, unless they're Turkish picking you up, who happen to be passing through Eastern Europe. You get to Western Europe, the lifts get really, really hard to come by, unless there happens to be an Eastern European driving through Western Europe. As we discovered when we were picked up in Austria by a Czech lady, and she actually, I still can't believe it, she drove us 200 miles out of their way to drop us off in Salzburg, our destination, just as a favour. She was only going 10 miles up the road. Incredible. That was a Czech in Austria. Then to get out of Spain, we had a long, long wait until a Romanian truck driver pulled up, picked us up, drove us all the way to Lyon in France. Now, France transpired to be a very difficult place in which to hitchhike. And I'm not in any sense anti-French, but I think it's just the further west in Europe you get, the more difficult it becomes. When we were in France, we had the longest wait we had anywhere. It was 6 hours. And in desperation, we retreated from where we were hitchhiking to these big, huge, paying stations, toll booths, Le Péage that they have on the motorway there. And we'd been advised that to hitchhike in that area was illegal. But we were in desperation, and there were so many cars slowing down, we thought, we'll give it a try here. So we waited, and sure enough, within 5 minutes, who's coming across towards us? The police making their way across the lines of cars. And we thought, oh, this is how our adventure is going to end in a French prison cell. And we then noticed one driver beckoning us over. We charged over to him, threw the doors open, leapt in. I think he was just saying, what are you doing, actually? But we jumped in, and off we sped, and saved from arrest. And he turned out to be an Italian, making his way to Belgium, so sort of heading in the right direction. And by a remarkable coincidence, we discovered that he actually had a Liverpool connection as well. He'd lived here for a long time while he had worked as the project manager on the construction of that huge new black building at Man Island down by the pierhead, a building which we'd never seen before at that time. We have seen it subsequently since we arrived back. And we realised actually that, knowing about his involvement in this building, that in fact it probably was that the gendarmes weren't coming for us. I think they were coming for him. But anyway, we saw that building when we came back, and I always think of this guy who gave us a lift and saved our bacon. So we got back, and the only fare that we paid all the way from Iraq to Liverpool was 2 tickets on the Mersey ferry to see us back over and home. So, in conclusion of my talk, I think our talk, the key message that I want to get across to you is that this culture of hospitality is still out there. There was a famous medieval Muslim traveller by the name of Ibn Battuta who travelled around the known world at the time. And I read a commentary on his books, and it said, at that time, travellers were so rare and hospitality so great that no traveller ever needed to carry money. Everywhere they would be greeted as an honoured guest. And I thought to myself, well, actually, this didn't die in the Middle Ages. It's just about finding the right places around the world where this culture still exists. And actually, it's not only that it exists in the developing world, it can exist here too. And sometimes technology can be the solution. Like websites like couchsurfing put you in touch with the people who've got that spirit of hospitality, who welcome in a guest and who treasure a guest like that. And really, all of us can do that, provided that we open our hearts to people, to receive the guest in that way, and we treat them in that way as an honoured guest in our own society. And by doing that, we bring ourselves all so much closer together, whether through the use of technology or otherwise. Our message really today is that the living culture of hospitality is still out there. And when people say to us, well, it wouldn't happen in Liverpool, we think to ourselves, with a change of heart, why not? Thanks very much.